I started cooking that food, and this is where I said something changed in me, and I felt like, maybe it should be the food that I'm cooking. Maybe like all these things that I grew up with and start doing. And we did the first menu in Nour, and it was a complete mishmash of North African, Lebanese, Israeli, Syrian, and everything. It was amazing for us. We had a lot of recognition, and he did what he did, and it was an amazing start.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. We've spoken on many occasions how the attraction and beauty of working in the hospitality sector is the ability to travel and work abroad. And although the pandemic halted any thoughts of that for many, there have been some that have managed to find a flight and take on new opportunities in new countries. Nour is the chef and co-owner of Jeru in London, England. Roy, how are you?
Hey, I'm very well.
Roy, you've only just recently left Sydney to get to London for this new gig. What was it like leaving Sydney and landing in London during a pandemic?
Listen, I actually got very lucky. I left Sydney a week after the lockdown started, the latest lockdown. The trip over was very weird because there's only like 2-3 flights out of Sydney's airport, so the airports are completely empty. And then when you get into Singapore to do a layover, it's like army status, so they treat you. It's full on how they do the checks. But then after we got to London, again, sometimes it's luck. I got into English summer, blue skies. Everybody told me that London is cold and raining. And I come into blue skies and hot weather, and people are walking with t-shirts. And I was like, well, I guess party's in London at the moment.
Well, what is it like compared to the environment that you've been in Australia for this period of time? We're all in lockdown for a vast majority of Australia at the moment. How different is it in London right now?
Oh, it's completely different. London is what Sydney was a year ago when we came back from lockdown. They were in lockdown here for almost a year on and off, and they just came out. They're not taking as much. I don't know if you know London. London used to have close to 40 million people coming in a year. So essentially close to 1 million people coming into the city every single week. And they don't have that now. But they have the Londoners, and the city is like Sydney was before. It was vibing. The restaurants are full. Wednesday onwards, all the restaurants are full. They're not booked out like before for months ahead, but they are booked out a week ahead, all the good restaurants. The people are out and about. There is no mask. The only mask happening is in tube or crowded places. People actually put in it, but there's no law against it. People are vaccinated. People just get on with life now. Like they used to have a ping over here, meaning your phone is essentially working as a Bluetooth transmitter to the government. So if somebody next to you in radius of 3 meters, essentially your phone will ping, and you'll have to let in isolation. But now they've cancelled that. Because I had double vaccination. Essentially, if you got a double vaccination, you're a free man.
Wow. What does it feel like being in that environment after what you've gone through in Australia in the last year?
For me, it was like pure luck. I've been here for 5.5 weeks. I think I ate in over 25 restaurants.
Wow.
I'm running. I literally ate my body weight here, and I'm out every day almost in 2 restaurants at this. I in the start I used to upload. Now I don't upload because my friends just send me nasty. The start it was fun. I was having fun in London, but then after that it just like, man, stop sending photos because we're getting angry, Start getting aggressive.
25 restaurants is a lot to do in a couple of weeks. Why so many? What's the urgency for you to explore these restaurants?
Essentially, it's getting a good feel of the vibe of the city, of where they push in, where should we do what. Like, I've got a very clear identity of what I'm doing as a chef, but you always need to really, really feel. And for me, the best way of feeling it is connect with the people and connect with the food. That's this is the way I communicate with the world. So I go and really, really observe. I was supposed to be in London a year ago, and you didn't do a little bit of a trip and get a real good feel of what we're doing, but I couldn't because of this pandemic. So I came in, and it's a crash course.
I'd love to explore more of what you're going to be doing there at Jeru, but take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family?
Big. So my mom heritage is Moroccan, and my dad heritage is Greek, believe it or not. So it's a big combination. Born in Israel. Israel is an immigrant country. It's a young country, 60 years old, 60 and a bit. Essentially, after World War II, everybody got on boats and met in Israel. So that's why you got a lot of mixed marriages and stuff like that. But what I like about it now it's generation 3 and 4 in that country. And it create a very, very agriculture style people. And that's obviously translated to food. So for me, essentially growing up, I was very, very connected to my mom's side of the family, which is Moroccan, North African, essentially. So the way my grandma used to connect with food, my mom wasn't. When she was younger, she wasn't the cook. She was very focus driven. She's a school principal and whatnot and whatever. But she wasn't really connected to the food as much. Later in her age, now she's an excellent cook. But when I grew up, it was really my grandma was the dominant thing, and the way she brought people together was food, and in the plentiful. Like, you won't go into a house and it'll be less than 15 things on the table, and she will make it look very easy, very quick. And I wasn't really when I grew up, the first instinct wasn't to be a chef. Very shortly after it was, but I think through my cooking, when you strip all the onion, and at the end of the day, Santa core, and people ask me how do I see hospitality, how do I feel I should translate that, and without even understanding what happened to me in a kid, that's how I celebrate food now. So if you come into my house, there won't be less than 10, 15 things on the table. There won't be. That's how we do it. And in a sense, that's what we're trying to create in a restaurant, that warm, feel environment when, it's like, let's talk about something else. Well, food is great. There's hips on the table, and let's just enjoy the day kind of thing. And that attitude is what we're trying to essentially translate in the restaurants now as a professional chef.
Is there any dish or feast that you can tell us about that you remember from your youth?
Yeah, so listen, growing up in the community that I grew up, you come together in weekends and holidays. And there is 4 major holidays in a year, one is Rosh Hashanah, which is the start of the year. You got Passover, which is around Easter. Then you got Shavuot, which is the cheese and wine. And you got Hanukkah, which is around Christmas time. And for us, the Passover and Rosh Hashanah is the 2 big feasts of the year. And Rosh Hashanah is when I was really, really, to me, because North African, which is my heritage, essentially celebrate that holiday like crazy people. If on a normal day they'll have 15 dishes, on Rosh Hashanah there will be a table very long. There will be like 4 tables basically joining together, just full, and everything is different. Everything will be in this, and they use everything. Like, when talking everything, is like when you buy a bunch of beetroot, you don't throw the leaf. The leaf's going to one meza, and then the beetroot goes to another meza, and they use everything. And we don't eat with fork and knife. It's all about get the bread in it and get the juices and really get into it. And I think that was my favorite, one of my favorite moments as a kid.
When did you start to get interested in food professionally and realize that chefing was for you?
It wasn't too. I was 20. I was 21, and I went into a catering job as a barman in the start, and I was running a bar, and then the food was always kind of glancing to me, and I started working in the kitchen, and I really got hooked into it. In the start, it was more of the logistics side, and then the status side and all of that. But very shortly after, I met a chef, and that chef was all about flavor and feel. Like, you know what I mean. It was all about like really connecting to the products, and I think through that I started exploring and exploring, and very quickly I fell in love in it. Um, I absolutely fell in love in that, and when I do something, I want to do it. I want to do it in the best. So I used to go. I was 22. I used to go. I worked as a job, but then I used to work for free in all the top restaurants in Tel Aviv. I used to knock on people's door, really like trying to essentially absorb as much knowledge as I could back then, and really absorb everything. And it wasn't about money or work for this. It was just about, you know what, if that's what I want to do in life, I really want to get a hold of it. And I was a driven young boy. And then, yeah, from there, I decided I want to, it doesn't matter what I do, I want to take it to the best school. Back then it was Cordon Bleu. Um, did that for a little bit. Basically came into Australia. I was supposed to go to France and America. I've got family there. And yeah, I was supposed to go there, and then somebody said, "Well, why don't you go to Australia and just have fun while you're doing study?" And they tell like, go and surf and this, and it sounds good. And I just came in. I was 23, almost 24. I came in and I did, and you know what? I went to school. School wasn't for me. I was like, "What am I doing here?" Uh, it was, and it was complete. Like, I already had experienced this. Like, what am I doing here? But very shortly, I still remember my teacher went and he said, "You want to do a day in a restaurant?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? I'll do a day in a restaurant." And I didn't know where he sent me, and he told me you should go to number 1 Macquarie Street. And I said, "What is this?" "This is a restaurant." So me, full blown Israeli, coming into essentially Aria. We're talking 2006. They just finished the renovation. Back then it was the big bad wolf, and like, you know what I mean? It was still throwing pens in the wall kind of style kitchen back then. And I'm walking in with a ripped shirt and flip flops into the kitchen, and like, heavy Israeli accent is like, "Hey guys, I'm here. Well, what are you doing?" kind of thing. Um, and it was pretty funny, and I walked in very very quickly. I got the lay of the land. I had a lot of fun there. I stayed there for 6.5 years. I got along. They really looked after us. Back then, it was the only restaurant, and there was like amazing people, and it was the only restaurant. So they really looked at it like as a family, and all the major partners and everybody was still there, and they really. It was real family feel, and time got passing, and I didn't even think, like, before I knew it, 6 years passed, and I was like, "Oh shit, like, I need to work out what we're doing here."
What did you take away from your time at Aria and working with Matt Moran?
Man, a lot. Like, it's a busy system, but it's also moving volume. It get the best products in the world, and how you systemize it, how you use it, and essentially spend a lot of time, and work ethics as well. How to treat hospitality back then was different to hospitality now. We worked 70 hours every single week, and that was normal. Now you don't work more than 45, 50 hours. That was a normal. It was different. We were driven for the brand, the restaurant, and the real teamwork. Like the people that we have over there that share their history with us. You know what I mean? They're very close friends. And essentially after that, fell in love with an Australian lady. And I was people asking me, what are you doing? Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to your family in America? I'm going to go back. I was asked to represent the Israeli national team in Sheffield, uh, and a couple of things. And I was like, I just needed a bit of a break, to be honest with you, because Aria, so I took a little gig in Darlinghurst just so I get my head straight, like worked 30 hours a week, like half a job kind of thing. And I was there for a couple of months, and friends of mine were like, Roy, what are you doing? Like, can you just come into my restaurant and help me with the menu while you're getting what you're doing? Just come in. People that know me, that was like this. So I did, and before I knew it, I ran 5 restaurants, or wrote menus for 5 restaurants, and I was like, that wasn't expected. And then I met Dani Russo, and like my friends basically introduced between us. I said, guys, you're kind of doing the same thing. Do you guys want to start together? And we looked at each other and it's like, no chance in hell we're working together. This guy is a fucking nutcase. But then we had a couple of Negronis, and then we got along. And then we started a certain journey with Dani, and he's actually amazing. I worked with him for 4.5 years. We did quite a bit. We did together over 15 restaurants. And it was quite a good thing, because I saw the industry from a different point of view, because you get to see it from an operator side and not just from the chef point of side, and from the whole things, because the people that you work with is essentially the people that like the owner of the hotels, the owner of the restaurant, the owner of this. And when you work at it in multiples of what we used to do, and took on pub groups. We used to do the Irish pub groups. They have 13 venues. So in one point I was controlling, not right it is, but I was controlling the menus and movement and logistics of more than 20 venues. And I was like, it was really getting me going. And I loved it. It was a good learning curve for me for long term. And essentially after that, I met a young guy that said, I want to do a Lebanese restaurant in 2016. And he said, I want to do a Lebanese restaurant. I said, man, listen, back then there was nothing, 2016. There was Gerard Bistro in Brisbane that did an amazing job, and there was Maha in Melbourne, but that was it. Like, there was nothing. And they were like, come and do a Lebanese restaurant. I said, man, I don't deep fry halloumi and chop tabbouleh. Leave me alone. Like, it's like I'm not. That's not what I do, mate. Just live it. And he's like, no, dude, let's have fun. I was like, mate, it was beyond me. But then he was Ibi, and then I was like, you know what? Maybe we should do it, and let's do it, but let's do it different, and da. And I kind of joined the start. I was a consultant chef, but then we kind of clicked in, me and Ibi, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I started cooking that food, and this is where I said something changed in me. And I felt like, maybe it should be the food that I'm cooking, maybe like all these things that I grew up with and start doing. And we did the first menu in Nour, and it wasn't Lebanese at all. It was a complete mishmash of North African, Lebanese, Israeli, Syrian, and everything. But everybody called it Lebanese because there was not this. And it was amazing for us. We had a lot of recognition, and he did what he did, and it was an amazing start. But back then I was still a little bit in and out. And then I decided something new. I was like, you know what? I was invited to cook in America with Tartine Bakery and with the head chef of the French Laundry. They've been there, the head chef, for 12 years. And I was invited to China and doing all this stuff. And people are like, without even understanding, we created a certain movement. Something just kind of grew, and I started being invited everywhere in the world, and people paying me flight tickets, and I'm going everywhere in the world sharing that food. And
can you give us an example of the food that you were creating at Nour it was a mix of Middle Eastern, but you're also putting a modern spin on things. Is there a dish or two that you can tell us about that exemplifies the success of that restaurant?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. There was a dish on the first menu. I don't like. I've been in Nour for 4 years, but I was really cooking there on the first two menus. That's what I was there, like really in the kitchen 5 days a week, driving this thing and driving the team and doing all of that. And we had one fish called fish sayadiyya, which is essentially fish. Fish sayadiyya is rice, fish, and tahini. And we're like, man, it's like we want to keep on tradition, but how are we gonna bring this thing? And we did cuttlefish rice with 7 spice and lamb fat. And when I say lamb fat, I mean Leah. Leah is the tail of the lamb. It comes from about 4 types of lamb. So it's if people Google sheep fat tail, you will see it. So certain sheep actually got a 2 kilo tail. A normal lamb tail will look like a pork tail, which is like nice and thin and whatnot. But there's certain breed in the sheep that actually have a 2 kilo tail, and that thing, it's basically the foie gras of the Middle East. Every time you go into a good barbecue place in Turkey or you go into the Middle East, and there is a charcoal smell that you can't put your head of what it is. Essentially, it's that fat, and we call it Leah. And we did that with that, and he gave the rice, and people didn't know what it is. So the rice was tasting amazing. It was Lebanese 7 spice, essentially cuttlefish, and that fat. And then we did tahini, but we caramelized. Tahini you can do either in water and lemon, or you can do with yogurt. But what we've done, we caramelized the yogurt overnight. So it goes a bit sweeter, and mix that with a good Chardonnay vinegar and that yogurt into the tahini, which is, if you look at traditional, it's like it's not really tradition. So it's little nuances. Then we put the fish on top. It was a beautiful snapper, which we covered with squid ink, and we had almonds and saffron cracker. And you know what? It's a humble fish and rice, but I can tell you it was full of flavor. The fish was this, and it had crunch, you had acid from the tahini, you had a thing. So this is a good example how a humble fish and rice can be something a little bit more without breaking out the identity of what the dish is.
This episode is proudly supported by Montague, handpicked for you.
The things that we're really looking for in plums, first of all, they've got to be sweet. We're really looking for a full flavour explosion in our plums. Red flesh is critically important to us, higher in antioxidants, so all that good stuff. And then we're also looking at a slightly firmer texture, so there's almost a little crunch. You know, that's the real driver for us.
For more information, go to montague.com.au.
How did Jeru come about with the UK? I know you've been waiting a year to get over there, but how did it all come to fruition?
Essentially, after I've done Nour, like I told you, I joined after the design was done, and after this and the identity was formed. And I was doing the food a lot more in the start and a bit less later, but I was doing the food. But and I love the boys, and I love the journey and what it gave me and what it is. Essentially, I wanted to create my space from scratch, and I had it's like in actor, and you want to make a movie. It was like I had this movie that I want to create. I wanted to do it, and I had a lot of people that believe in what I do. They wanted to share that journey with me, and they wanted to do it. And it took me a while. I was for about a year meeting people and traveling the world and eating amazing restaurants. I was in New York. I was in California. I was everywhere. I was invited to California to do food hall concept with Tartine Bakery and team from Otium. Basically, we did the food court for the LFC, for the LA this, and I was there in California for 6 months, just meeting people. And whatever happened, I was actually going to land a restaurant in LA. But I told the guys, Americans, that I don't want to do it. I don't want to work for them. I want to do it as a partner. So I'm going to come to Australia, find a partner, and come back to them, and go basically 50-50, which we did. And I came with Bradley Michael from Seagrass. And we started the journey, and Bradley does steakhouses, and he's amazing. He's got 54 restaurants. He's like a godfather of the hospitality. A real leader style, and he's got 1,700 people working for him. Real like family corporate. It's corporate, but it's family corporate. And amazing leadership skill. And they don't really do what we're about to do. Usually they've done it with Sixhead and a couple of other things. And he looked at me and he goes like, Rory, I've done restaurants my whole life. I'm essentially Lebanese. He's Lebanese South African, but I never did Middle Eastern yet. And I would like you and me to do it. And the start we were like, going back and forward, and then we decided we're going to do it. And we went to LA, and I said, you know what, first one is on me then. The boys are here in LA. I've got everything lined up. Come in and we'll do it. And something told him, it was actually him, and said, you know what, something doesn't feel right. I think we should miss it. I said, okay, why? Like, we have everything. He goes like, I think we should miss it. And I don't know, a voice inside of me trusted him. So we did. After I spent a lot of time in LA, I was going to go. And 2 weeks after we said we're not going to do it, LA went into lockdown. I got lucky with these lockdowns. Yes. Crazy. And he's got a private island in Fiji. He invited me to his private island in Fiji and said, all right, what are we doing? And I wasn't sure. He invited all of his head of his company, and it's a big company. It's 1,700 employees. He invited all his head of his company and the chefs, and we did this big cook-off in Fiji in his island, and was like, well, what are we doing? And he goes, what do you think about London? And I said, I don't know. I don't know London. He goes, what do you think about Mayfair? I said, I don't know Mayfair. But it doesn't matter. What we do now, it's like we got a movie. It doesn't matter where you play. It's going to be good. And then he said, listen, I've got the perfect site. We partner up with the landlord. We can do what we need to do. And I think it's great stuff for you. And I said, listen, I don't know. And that's how the site came about. And in the start, I was very doubtful. And I started talking to people of where our sites. And again, got very lucky. We in 11 Barclay Street here in Mayfair, which is exactly halfway through basically between the Ritz and Berkeley Square, which is the main street of London dining scene, essentially. For that, like it's like prime location on George Street in Sydney. And we have a 570 square restaurant site on 2 levels. And we're like, all right, we bought it from Sushi Samba. Over here is they're a big group. It's a Zoomer group. They're very busy. We took the site off them, and a week after we took the site, we have an offer to buy off the site from us, and we could have made a lot of money just by walking away. And we all looked at each other and he said, what are we doing? Are we doing it? Is it about money, or we actually want to do it? And every one of us looked at each other and said, you know what? We want to do it. It's not about money. We actually want to do it, and we want to do it very well. And from there, the road just kind of paved himself up. Everybody were like, it's like a band on the same tune. You know what I mean?
Well, this is your chance to create a restaurant from the ground up. Tell us what your vision is for Jeru and what you'll be doing there.
Wow. So for me, like hospitality, I grew up in a family. I told you, it's all about the food. So we had a 70 square meter that in the start, we could only have the license for 500 inside. And I wanted to ask me, what do you want to do with the 70? Do you want to do a bar? I said, you know what? Every place in the world's got a bar. I don't want to be, look, we'll have a bar, but what do you want to do? I said, big part of our cuisine is bread and how we're doing bread. And I said, I also want to, Jeru essentially, it's an old city in an ancient Semitic language. Ancient Semitic is the time before the Arab nation became a nation, before the Jewish nation became a nation, before the Christianity became Christianity. There was a city over there on a mountain with a river, and then something happened there. Something happened to create such a vibe that became back then the center of the world. And I think that message that we're trying to do in Jeru is, it's not about, I look at the Middle East like a region as opposed to Lebanon as a country and Israel as a country or Jordan. I look at them as regions, and me using things from every region to create one wholesome menu. And I think that's what Jeru is all about. That's the message. And what we're doing is, like, I started and I decided that I want to do a bakery and a wine bar at the front, which is very non-Mayfair thing. Mayfair is, you come Friday night, Saturday night, all the restaurants essentially got DJ and vibe and, like, you know, and full blown doorman at the front, and none of them got this. And I wanted to capture that, what I feel is a Sydney style hospitality when you're coming in a place like, you know, in Erskineville or in one of my favorite restaurants in Sydney, in Hubert, when it's like, it's warm hospitality, you're coming in, and it's not about just bars and drinks and high tops and ladies. It's about, you know, we start with bread. I put a whole sheep and goat cheese program at the front. I started working on all my goat, lamb, and beef salumi charcuterie program. So there's no pork. And that's what you get. So the idea is, you're coming in, you have a glass of natural wine, you have a bit of salumi. It's like almost like you're going in Barcelona and you have a bucaria when you go in and you have a little bite and then you leave. And everybody that walks in the venue have to go to that space. And then when you open that, when you go through that door, there's a little door. So it's like the city is behind the bakery. So start with a little bit of old school, you know, start with a little bit of soul as opposed to just a normal bar. And then when you walk in the restaurant, it's quite beautiful. So it's 70 seats on the top floor, with a full blown open kitchen. No boundaries. I've got dry aged freezers for meat. I've got dry aged freezers for fish. I've got a whole miso program fridges going in there in different fridges. I've got a wine room. I've got private dining room. We say it, we have it. It's crazy.
Well, after the long build up to finally get to where you are, how's it going to feel when you open the doors on a restaurant you've built from the ground up?
Man, for me, it'd be a pinnacle point. Essentially, it's the first time so I get to show the world what I'm sharing my art. It's my first signature on a painting at the bottom. From that, I've done a lot in my life and I created a lot of commercial success to a lot of people. But I really feel like it's the first time in my life when I really sign on my painting at the bottom and I stand firm behind it and being vulnerable for people to let them feel and their opinion. What do they think about that?
Well, it sounds amazing, Roy, and we're very honoured to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear your story and hear of the opening up over there as well and a society getting back to normal. Please keep in touch. Good luck with the restaurant, and we'll talk again soon. This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.